Hello and welcome to the Psych Leadership Podcast, the show that helps you understand the psychology of growth, leadership, and making big moves in your life and career. As always, my name's Luke Upchurch. So happy you took time out of your day to hang out with me. Today we're going to talk about the idea of comparison and how it steals your joy. So let me paint a picture for you. This is a moment that I hope it resonates with you, but at the same time, I'm a little sad that it does, right? You're doing fine, not perfect, but you're steady, right? You've got your assignments ready for school. You've landed the interview. You show up and do your job, those kind of things. And then you start scrolling, right? You get into that mind-numbing Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is. You start scrolling, and someone else just announced that they landed the job you wanted. Or, a classmate post about an acceptance letter. They share a promotion or certificate, right? A highlight reel. And then suddenly the ground shifts. Not because your progress has changed, but because your reference point just did. That emotional drop isn't accidental, it's psychological. And it's one of the most common reasons that people will lose motivation, confidence, and joy, both during school, early in career, later in career, right? I mean, I can tell you, I have just recently been, frankly, kind of struggling with this myself. I finished my master's degree earlier this year, and I've struggled with the idea of, should I continue on, right? Is the juice worth the squeeze in terms of going after a doctorate degree, for example? It's a big investment, but I don't know, the title sounds really cool. And then every time that I talk myself out of it, every time that I get to the point that I think, you know what, it probably doesn't really get me where I want in my career. It doesn't necessarily change anything for me. It doesn't get me more money. It's literally just the prestige of the title and the personal accomplishment of knowing that I did something more. But the reason that it keeps popping back into my head is that I fall victim to this exact same concept. I'm scrolling through Facebook, I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, and one of my colleagues is working on her doctorate degree, and the other one just recently finished hers and is getting some well-deserved recognition. And you know what, man, I am excited for them, and at the same time, it kind of turns the focus on me. Like, well, shoot, they're out there accomplishing big things. What am I doing? Right? I'm not even in my day job. I don't even use my degree. And so that starts to draw into question. That starts, getting that emotional drop that we're talking about. So the psychological name for this, it's actually called social comparison theory. It was originally proposed by a guy named Leon Festinger. I think I'm pronouncing that last name right. But the idea is fairly simple, right? Humans evaluate themselves by comparing to others, especially when there's no clear objective or standard for success. Grades, career, leadership, identity, these are all sort of ambiguous, right? They're ideas that are just out there in the ether. So we kind of look at it sideways. We don't look at it head on. And research shows that the process becomes especially intense when we're early in career, early in our forming our own identity and self-concept. Again, I say early in career, I'd like to tell you that this goes away. I don't know. Maybe it does for some folks. It really doesn't for me. Like I'm always looking at, what have I done recently? Am I making a difference? Those kinds of things. I mean, frankly, even with this podcast, I've questioned, do I keep recording it? To be candid, I'm not getting any donations from this. This is a hobby at this point, and it's costing me $20 a month to host. So I struggle with that. Right? Like, does this actually make a difference? And my hope is that somebody out there listening, that you hear this and this gives you a little bit more push, right? That this lights your fire just a little bit. Maybe future you, maybe tomorrow you is a little bit better because of something that I said here, right? Maybe I got the wheels turning or something. And that pushes me forward. But again, that concept of self-comparison and looking at where are you in comparison to your peers, it's so fuzzy. It's not there isn't a magic badge that you get, right, when you are successful. They don't they don't hand you the keys of the city. They don't give you a big trophy, a plaque for your wall or something like that. So what is successful to you is different than what is successful to me. And because of that, we're always looking outward and trying to compare. And so most recent studies have found that people with a high tendency to compare themselves to others, they actually experience low self-esteem, higher stress and anxiety, more negative emotions after getting feedback, and a reduced overall well-being. This effect is strongest when we're doing an upward comparison, meaning we compare ourselves to people that we believe are ahead of us, whether that's a bigger house, a bigger car, fancier job, whatever. But the key part is that comparison doesn't lower self-esteem because you're doing poorly. It actually lowers self-esteem because it reframes your progress as insignificant. And so that's really the challenge. And social media, you've probably heard all kinds of articles that say, social media is actually bad for your mental health. I'd have to pull the article, but there was in the APA a couple months back, in the magazine that they send out, it's called The Monitor. They were talking about this concept that yes, social media, like anything else, if it is used in the wrong way, it can be a problem. Right. And an example I would give you, everybody that's listening to this probably has a couple tools in their house, right? Hammer, screwdriver, something like that. If you use those tools correctly, absolutely, they can help build things. But, if you use them poorly, if you slam down that hammer on the tip of your thumb, I'm sure that you would beg to differ, right? It doesn't exactly make the world a better place. Well, social media is kind of the same thing. If I use social media as a comparison tool, then yeah, it's going to tear me down. I can also use it, though, to surround myself with people that are going through the same kind of thing. So what I'm going to encourage you to do here is, instead of using social media to say, where is somebody else in relation to me? Surround yourself with people that are going through the same kind of struggle as you, or are pushing towards the same kind of goal as you, right? Give that community. So, cancer survivors will do this, or I shouldn't say survivors, but people going through cancer treatment. It's no different than having a group of folks that you talk with in a physical meeting place, right? Like a support group. It's the same kind of thing, just a digital presence. In the same vein, though, if you surround yourself by people that are negative, you can't be super surprised when you start adopting that same mindset. So use with caution. But going back to comparison, why does social media make it worse? Well, social media, it accelerates this process of comparison. Just because it's always in your face, and also because, frankly, people exaggerate stuff so much. Just the other day, I'm scrolling through LinkedIn myself, doing exactly what I'm telling you not to do, right? Practice what you preach, Luke. So I'm sitting there scrolling through social media, and there's this side-by-side view of reality versus what somebody posts on social media. Essentially, the left side of the picture said something like, that the person had just obtained their driver's license, and that one was labeled what really happened. Well, what they shared to the world was on the right side, and it was the same image, this person, self-portrait or, professionally or AI enhanced picture, but they completely elaborate the explanation. It said something to the effect of, I'm honored and thrilled to announce that I've been selected among the top 5 applicants who have participated in a professional and most respected exam to evaluate the skills and ability to operate a fuel-based vehicle. Right? You get the idea. Social media is predicated on the idea of exaggeration. It doesn't show you the whole picture. It doesn't show you all the bullshit they had to go through to get where they are, right? It just shows you what somebody is willing to share. We've talked about this before. I think the analogy that I used is a person may share on there that they got this big raise or this big bonus. They don't tell you that, in order to do that they had to miss their kids' recital and work late and weekends and holidays and this, that, and the other, right? They don't show you the whole picture. So research consistently shows that frequent comparison on social media predicts low self-esteem and well-being, especially amongst those young professionals like we talked about. And the reason is exposure imbalance. You're seeing other people's outcomes without the effort, the context, or the setbacks. Meanwhile, you're fully aware of all that same stuff in your own life, of your own doubts, your delays, the learning curves. Your brain fills this gap and assumes that everyone else has it figured out. Listen, they don't. But that comparison still lands us emotionally as if they do. Self-esteem, the cost of constant self-esteem is that comparison. Studies with college students show that frequent upward comparisons is linked to, we already talked about the drops in self-esteem, but it also drops our academic confidence. It increases our stress. And, we talked before about the stronger feedback. Well, when we put this in the context of a student, it's stronger emotional reactions to grades as well. So you'll get folks that, they got an A- and they're flipping out over it, right? Because so-and-so just posted how they aced the class. Well, again, you don't know what else so-and-so had to do to get there. You have your life story. You only know the tip of theirs. All right. So what's important here is the mechanism. Research suggests comparison lowers self-esteem first, and that reduction of self-esteem drives stress, disengagement, and burnout. So when someone says comparison just motivates me, the data actually suggests that this is only true in short bursts. Over time, it actually erodes our confidence. Okay, so it's okay to be competitive, but when you're constantly in second or third place, when you're constantly behind the eight ball, well, motivation comes from self-criticism, or motivation that comes from self-criticism is unstable, right? Motivation that comes from self-trust lasts a lot longer. So let's talk a little bit then about the comparison versus growth and the psychological difference of the two, right? Comparison focuses on position. Growth focuses on trajectory. So when you compare, the question becomes, am I ahead or behind? When you grow, the question becomes, am I learning? Psychologically, those questions activate different systems. Comparison activates our threat, our envy, our evaluation of ourself, whereas a growth mindset is going to activate curiosity, mastery, self-efficacy. Okay, so let's go back to, I told you that I was looking at my colleagues that are working on their PhD and wondering if I should be there. Oh, if I look at it in comparison, the one is slightly older than me or about the same age. The one's a little younger than me, right? I feel behind. I'm immediately putting myself in that defensive mode, right? Where I'm envious of where they are. I'm, from a career standpoint, I'm threatened maybe, right? Especially the one that's younger than me that already has her PhD. Whereas if I look at it from a growth mindset, first off, I can get out of my own damn way and be happy for them for what they've accomplished, right? Again, I don't know their story, but getting a PhD is pretty damn impressive, right? But when I look at it from the growth mindset, I wonder, what am I doing with my career? Am I making a difference? Am I enforcing change or influencing change, I should say, right? And whether it's a PhD or just learning something new, I would rather increase my curiosity. I would rather increase my mastery of the topic versus having that piece of paper. And maybe the piece of paper comes, maybe I do someday go after that. But is it a requirement? Well, maybe not. All right. Research shows that people who believe comparison is threatening or uncomfortable experience more depression, envy, identity confusion. Those who can shift that, those internal benchmarks experience greater self-control and clarity. So this is not pretending that the other people don't exist. It's choosing a reference point that doesn't punish you for being who you are. So how do we reframe this? Right? Instead of asking, why am I behind them? Try asking, what stage am I in? Right? Take them out of the equation. Early career development especially is not linear. And I mean, again, this doesn't necessarily stop once you're progressed in your career. It's uneven by design, right? Different starting points, different timelines, different constraints. Psychologically healthy comparison does one thing only. It provides information, not judgment. That's the critical point there. The movement comparison turns into self-criticism. The moment comparison turns into self-criticism. It stops becoming useful. So let's talk a little bit then more about the role of self-comparison. This is where self-comparison does matter. Research consistently shows that self-comparison buffers the negative effect of social comparison. Okay, people who treat themselves with fairness instead of harsh evaluations, they experience a higher resilience, more stable self-esteem, less emotional volatility after feedback. So self-comparison doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means separating effort from identity. You can want growth without turning every delay into a verdict about your own self-worth. So let's close out here with some practical takeaways so that you can reclaim your joy. When comparison shows up, I want you to pause. I want you to ask yourself, what information am I actually gaining here? What assumptions am I making about myself? And maybe what assumptions are you making about the other person, right? What would progress look like at your stage? Comparison only steals your joy when it replaces your perspective. So you don't need to stop noticing other people. You need to stop measuring your future against this little snapshot of them. All right, so folks, in closing here, I'm going to leave you with a couple messages. First off, wherever you're at in your career, starting, in the middle, reaching the finish line maybe, right? Your path is not late. You got where you're supposed to be when you were supposed to be there. You know, I think I've mentioned a couple times that I went after college really late in life. I got through it after kids, after establishing a career, right? It doesn't mean that I got there late. It means I got there when I was supposed to. It's not wrong. It's not behind. It's unfolding. And joy returns when growth becomes a metric again, right? When we get away from comparison and start thinking about, am I better today than I am yesterday? So that's really the mantra that I want you to go forward with. We're not trying to beat your colleague on social media. We're just trying to beat yesterday's version of you. All right, folks, that's all I have for you today. We will talk again soon. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the podcast. Thanks so much for your time today. If you like this content, I'm going to ask that you consider a small donation. Every little bit helps, but this allows us to continue not only doing the podcast, but actually offering the internship positions, the leadership conferences, as well as the in-person courses that we deliver to high school and college students. Think about hitting the donation button for me. And again, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.